Hello everybody, welcome back to my RC plane channel. I'm James, continuing on with this Balsa USA Stingray 120 kit build. So in my last video, I constructed the left wing panel. Well, at least to this point, constructed the left wing panel. And then off camera, I constructed the right wing panel, as you can see right here. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to join the wings together, the wing panels together, and in the process I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be setting the dihedral. Okay, so before I get started with that, I do want to make a kind of a quick note here. And if you've been following my channel, I posted on the community tab, I posted some pictures and some notes regarding the joints between the spar and the ribs. And what I found as I was constructing this is that there's a pretty significant gap between all of the ribs and the spar. And I'm going to bring a couple pictures up so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And you can see these pictures on, if you go look at the community tab again, I posted them there. And there's a significant gap between the ribs and the spar. Now, the thing is that having gaps on an airplane kit build is not unusual. You do have gaps from time to time. They tend to be kind of, usually you hope that they're going to be sort of minimal. And then the way you deal with that is to use something like a thick CA, like a gap filler CA. And there's a variety of methods for filling gaps. You can fill them in with, like, for example, baking soda with CA, kind of fill in, kind of pack baking soda in the joint. You can use sawdust to do the same thing. You can use sort of like resins or something like micro balloons, which are made for like fiberglass work. There's a variety of ways. You can put shims, or you can even put like little gussets, things like that. But hopefully that's sort of like you don't have to do too much of that. But in this case, I found that the joints or the connections between the ribs and the spars were, I think, pretty excessive. So in any case, I contacted Balsa USA and tried to get some information on that, and you can check out the post in the community. I don't want to get into all those details right now, but I did have to go through all of these joints or all of these connections, if you want to call them connections, joints, I don't know, and check them. And I had to apply multiple times a thick CA. I chose just to use a thick CA to sort of fill them in. And I did it that way. It took me a couple of tries to get them all kind of filled in. But that's what I did. And here's a couple pictures, or here's a picture of kind of what it looks like. So in any case, I'm just going to move on from that. I don't want to dwell on that too much. And I want to get to joining the wing halves and setting the dihedral. All right, so to set the dihedral and to join the wings, they give you two pieces of plywood, stock material like this, and another small piece of plywood like this. And these are going to get, well, I'll show you eventually, but these are basically going to sandwich the spars in the center of the wing. You're going to sandwich the spars, the main spars, and then epoxy that. And then this little guy is going to go up on the front, sort of right behind the leading edge. And I'll show you that in just a minute. I just wanted to show you these items right now. So for the dihedral, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it a little bit different than how they have you do it in the manual. And I think the best way to sort of describe the two methods is to get out a piece of paper and just kind of draw a couple little sketches. Okay, so let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to draw a quick couple quick sketches. So here's my table, looking at it sideways. And in the way I'm going to do it, now this is pretty intuitive, so this is the way probably a lot of people do this, is you set your wing at, I'm just going to draw it like this. You take we're going to have one wing, and it's going to be set up, and this is going to be exaggerated, 3/4 of an inch here. And then I'm going to take the other wing and do the same thing, set it up like this, 3/4 of an inch here. And then they're going to join together. Makes sense, right? So let me go ahead and we'll look real close at sort of what's going on at the spars and sort of that leading edge and trailing edge where it's going to be connected. So I'm going to draw another sketch, and this is going to be sort of a zoom in, if you will. So here's going to be my top spar. here's going to be my bottom spar, like this. Okay. And then the same thing for the other wing. I'm just going to go ahead and try to draw it somewhat close. Bear with me, please. There's that one there, and then this guy's here. And that's the way it's going to look like. Obviously, you take the wing and you rotate it up, right? So then what you do is once the wing is propped up, you know, we go way out here on the edge, the wing is going to be propped up 3/4 of an inch, okay, on both sides. All right. And then what you do is you take your square, or take a square, and you set it on the table. Here's my table. You set it on the table, and you take your square and you kind of go to the bottom spar, and again, this is exaggerated, and we're going to draw a vertical line up like this on each of these, on the spars like this, on each side. And then we're going to cut those off. We're going to cut these pieces off along those lines. And then what we end up with, obviously, then we can just put them together. So then what we end up with, real quick, we'll just use one spar, like maybe the upper spar as our example. It's going to look like this. And then the other guy is going to be right up against it like this. Okay? Makes sense. And a lot of you are probably saying, what's this guy talking about? Obvious. It's all obvious, right? And then if you look at this, if you're looking straight at the wing, if you drew a vertical line right through where it joins, you're going to have a vertical line that sort of bisects the dihedral like this. Okay? Now let's move this one out of the way. So this is the way I'm going to do it. And let me show you the way they have you do it in the instructions. So remember I said that there was going to be 3/4 of an inch measured up at each wingtip. 3/4 inch in each wingtip. Okay. What the instructions say to do is to take the left wing, only the left wing, and they want you to, again, prop it up. I'm going to exaggerate a little bit just so we can see it. So they want you to prop the wing up, and again it's going to come down like this for a total of 1.5 inches. Just one wing at 1.5 inches. Okay, and then the same thing. Here's your table, like this, and like that. And then they have you put your angle on there, I mean your square on there, and again draw your vertical line on your spars, and then cut those pieces off. Okay, makes sense? And then what they have you do is, you don't do that for the other wing panel. What they have you do is just take the other wing panel and put it right up against the one you cut. You lay the other wing panel straight on the table like this, and you put it straight up against it like that. And I realize my picture is going to get a little messy, but so it would end up looking like this. Okay, like that. Okay. And let me just move this paper out of the way because I want to draw one more diagram. Hopefully this is going to make sense to everybody. So then what's going to happen is, once you join your two pieces, once you join your two wings together, I'll draw my upper and lower again real quick, and this is actually pretty important. Here's my lower spar after we cut it. Okay, boom, boom, right here. And then this is your table, and then you go ahead and you prop you butt the other wing up against it, like I just mentioned, like this. Okay, I realize I'm drawing the picture again, but I just want to make it cleaner. You'll see my point here in just a few seconds. So there you go. There's your wing. So then, right, so now if you take your wing, this is your wing, let's say this is your complete wing, like this, and you rotate it, like this to get your dihedral, what just happened? Okay, notice that here is the axis, here's your angle for your dihedral where it connects. You'll have 3/4 of an inch. When you do that, you'll have that 3/4 of an inch on each side, like I had here. you'll have that 3/4 of an inch. Okay, but you'll notice that you're now offset the bottom portion of the wing, or basically the entire wing. Now the center line of the wing is offset. So if we did the dihedral, so if we drew a dihedral like we did here, okay, if we drew the line going through the center of the wing, you see kind of how it's symmetric right here. If you do that through this one, you're going to end up with your center line is over here. Does that make sense, right? So basically, by doing it the way that they have you do it, you get the 3/4 of an inch on the outside. That's okay. But what happens is the wing gets offset at the center. The center line of the wing gets rotated, if that makes sense, the way I'm describing it. Okay. So again, what's going to look like is your wing will go like this, but then this will be the top part of the wing. This will be the top part of the wing, and the lower part of the wing is actually going to come over here like that. And then when you put this on your airplane, it's going to be offset. Now is that a big deal? Maybe it doesn't matter that much in the end of at the end, maybe it doesn't matter, but I just don't like that. I like it to be kind of clean like this, and everything to be, have that center line going right through the middle of the wing like that. So any case, so I guess on one hand, if you do that 3/4 of a cut, if you do that 1.5, you've set it up like this with 1.5 inches, you only have to cut one wing and then just butt it right up against it, and perhaps that's easier, right? And then you just go ahead and you install your wing. You get the 3/4 of an inch on each side, but you end up, like I said, sort of rotating and kind of offsetting the center or the axis of the wing. All right, so here's my left wing, and I have it set up so that I can mark my angle cuts for my spars and for my leading and my trailing edge. Now what I did is on the tip here, using the block, I kind of located the block in the right location so that I can raise the tip up at 3/4 of an inch. You can kind of see that right in there, 3/4 of an inch off the table. And then to keep the wing, want the wing to be flat, but I also want it to be, level. So the way I did that is, you can see I used these machinist 1, 2, 3 blocks. I have a set here, and then I have a set here, and I just sandwiched the spars, as you can see, and they're heavy. So what they do is they basically weigh down the wing and they hold it nice and sturdy. So that's how I'm keeping it sort of straight. Okay, so now when we look at that lower spar, for example, you can see that it raises off the table and it goes all the way back to our 3/4 inch at the tip over there. So then, because now it's on an angle, I can take my square and I can line it up. Let me go over here and line it up right on the edge, like so. And then you can see how that angle is now going to be. I can just trace that angle onto the spars themselves. And then the same thing for this leading edge. I can put it right about there. It's kind of hard to tell, right about there. You can kind of see it in there. Maybe I should go like this. There you go. You can kind of see it there. And then the same thing for the trailing edge. And then what you can notice once again, when I put this on here, right about there, so there's not very much that I'm actually going to be trimming off. But just that little bit obviously makes a difference, right? So if you look again back at toward the tip, you see how much it matters. Okay? All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and mark my line. I'm going to carefully hold this in place. And there it is. Now obviously you can tell that it's not very much. Now I'll do the same for the leading edge. Oops. That. And again, it's not very much, but it does make a difference. Okay, now for the trailing edge, because it's not solid, it's just two pieces. There's one down here and one up here. I'm just going to line it up on the bottom one. I'm not going to worry about the bottom one, and I'm just going to mark the top. And now to help me kind of keep it straight, and I could have done this previously, I'm going to mark it on the other side also. Same thing for the leading edge. Okay, now that I can see on both sides where the line is, I'm going to connect across the top. Use my straight edge. And that'll help me when I'm cutting it. Now I realize you're looking at this is a very small, fine cut. This is just, so I could probably even just sand that, but that would probably come out curved if I did it that way. So again, it's not perfect, but we're going to get, when we do this, we're going to get the angle for both wings now, and it's going to join nicely, and I think that's going to be a better way to do it. Okay, so here's our right wing setup. All right, so now I'm ready to trim off these tips and sand them, and then I'll go ahead and set up to join the wings and set the dihedral. And of course, when I get to that point, I will be measuring just to make sure that everything, that I have 3/4 of an inch on both sides, both wing tips, and I'll be making sure everything is straight across the wing and try to get it as good as possible. Okay, so I'm going to use my blocks again to sort of hold this thing down and give it some weight, help secure it. And I was looking at this thing and I'm realizing that it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world to trim such a small amount off of these at that angle using a saw. I can try to trim the upper one because I have something there I can sort of bite onto, but these other ones, they just basically need to be angled back just a little bit. So for the leading edge, this middle spar, lower spar down here, and then the trailing edge, I'm just going to try to see if I can trim. Well, these I can trim with an X-Acto blade. This one may be a little bit hard to shave off, but I think I'm going to do it that way. So I'm going to try it that way. And again, as long as the upper one is brought back a little bit and these ones have a little bit of an angle on them, we can work with that when we get to setting our dihedral. Carefully. All right, so here we go. So I'm sorry about those last few clips. I realized it was probably difficult to see what I was doing. It turned out that using the saw was a little bit difficult. I was able to use the saw for the upper spar because I can kind of bite into it. I had enough to work with. But for the lower spar and for the leading edge and trailing edge, I ended up having to use an X-Acto blade, as you saw, and kind of sand it and such. But I think I got the angle okay, and I think it's set pretty well. And I do have a little bit of, it's not perfect. There's a little bit of kind of odd little gap here and there, but that's going to be okay because we're going to sandwich it with the plywood. Now it's time to join the wing halves together and set the dihedral. So let me show you how I have this set up. So the left wing is flat on the table, and the reason I'm doing it this way is because my table is just simply not long enough to prop up each wing 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to put my wing flat on the table, sort of like the way the Balsa USA instructions say, and then I have the right wing propped up at 1.5 inches. And let me see here. So you may be asking, so why am I going back to the 1.5 inches? And hopefully it's kind of obvious, because since I don't have enough room on my table to prop up, to have the entire wing laid out and have a 3/4 of an inch on both sides, I can go with the 1.5 inches on one side. But in terms of that sort of geometry issue I had, what I was telling you about in the beginning of the video, it's going to be okay because now both of these have an angle cut into them. So anyhow, that's how it's going to work. Okay, so the other thing I need to check is to make sure the wing is straight, going all the way across. And I have a level over here, basically a straight edge that I'm using. And obviously I'm going to eyeball it. I'm always trying to eyeball it, because even if I'm making measures, I want to make sure it looks okay. And it looks pretty good. Now the camera has sort of a fisheye lens, if you will, these cameras. So it looks like it may look like it's curving or something, but it actually is pretty good. Okay, so the way the wings are going to be joined together, as I mentioned, I'm going to have this piece of plywood goes on the front of the spars here, and then I have one that's going to be, going to fall back, and then I have one that's going to be in the rear of the spars, and it's going to sandwich them together like so, using 30-minute epoxy. And then these are a little bit narrow, and the reason they're a little bit narrow is because of the angle created by the dihedral. If they made them as wide as the spacing of the spars, they would overhang kind of where the spars rise up, if you will. And in order to avoid that, you just put them in sort of in the center. So these will be set in here like this and probably raised up a little bit. If they did hang over a little bit, obviously we can sand them back. And then there's going to be this little piece of plywood that goes here, and then right in for the trailing edge, we're going to slide there's going to be a block that we slide back in here as well. All right, well, I had to reset my wing up because I forgot to put saran wrap down. I didn't want to epoxy my wing to my table. And then I wanted to show you the filler block that's going to go in the trailing edge here. So this is 5 inches in length, and we're going to just mark the center of it, just so that we kind of know approximately how to put it in there at 2.5 inches, right about here. That's the center of the block, and this is just going to slide right inside here, and it just slips right inside here, and we're going to epoxy that in as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and use this Bob Smith Industries 30-minute epoxy. I'm going to use the 30-minute in the middle for the spars, just in case I need a little bit more time to work with it. I'm kind of low on it, so if I run out of it, I'm going to use the 5-minute epoxy for the leading edge and trailing edge. 5-minute epoxy is just as good, as it just doesn't take, obviously have to work quicker. So let me go ahead and I'll mix some of this, and then we'll get our plywood pieces on. Okay, and I realize you may not be able to see it, but I'm going to go ahead and set this one, the front, the leading edge, piece on. And now I can go ahead and slide in the trailing edge block. And they make the trailing edge block a little thinner than the opening. And they do that, well, they do that probably because it allows it to sort of sit in there with a little bit of that dihedral. And then the epoxy will hopefully kind of fill in any kind of gap. But there's our mark. Gonna have to hold it because it will tend to kind of glide on you. In fact, I may put a couple pins. I can put a couple pins on the inside. These pins aren't actually going into the base to that harder wood. It's just going into the balsa. And that piece of wood serves two purposes. It strengthens the joint, and it also, this is where the holes are going to be drilled for the mounting bolts into the fuselage. That should be pretty good. Alright, so that's it. I'm going to let this cure overnight, a good 24 hours, even though it's 30-minute epoxy. It sets up in 30 minutes, but it takes a while to cure. I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm going to leave it overnight, let it get really cured up nicely, and then we'll come back and take everything off and we'll check it out. Alright, so I let this sit overnight and it's now fully cured, and let me go ahead and pull this apart. There's a lot of epoxy that dripped down onto my plastic wrap down here, so I got a feeling it's going to be stuck on there. Probably going to have to cut it off, but here we go. Here, let me pull these clamps off. Yeah, got it on the bottom, but I'll just cut it off of there. Okay, so as you can tell, I'm going to be just kind of cleaning this up. It's okay, there was just a little bit more on there. I got to just, my biggest thing is I just want to make it smooth across when I put the sheeting on. But that's okay that I had a little overrun on there. And I'm doing is when I have my dihedral, when the plane's upside down, I like to put a towel or something underneath it to support it so that you don't put pressure on the dihedral brace. In any case, let's flip this over again. Okay, so our dihedral is now set and the wings are obviously joined. The next few steps are going to include setting the dowels in the center section here. Also setting the center ribs are going to go in here. And then we're going to put another strip along the leading edge out here. And then from there we're going to start shaping it and then start doing the sheeting. Alright, so that's going to be about it for now. Join me next time when I continue on with the wing. And like always, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching my channel, and we'll see you next time.